So for book club today, we are reading Killing Sacred Cows, and we are reviewing myths 2 and 3.
Yes.
Go for it.
So myth 2 and 3, I feel like they kind of go together pretty well. One's kind of about investing for the long haul, and then the other one is about it's all about the numbers, which honestly I feel like even reading this for a second time, it still kind of gets me a little. So starting off, really, what do you think after kind of reading the chapter? What do you think causes the invest for the long haul myth? And why would we call it a myth? Say.
Well, I think people buy into it because so many generations did buy into it. And at one point we came from king and queen, not everybody could share. Then they came to the United States, and all of a sudden you could become kind of what you wanted as people started evolving, and a million years ago. But I think that the 50s, the 60s, people coming out of the 20s, as they started growing wealth, I would say that's when the common person probably started growing it. It was an easy myth. It sounded good on paper, and so it just transpired into what I think our older generations taught us. I don't think anybody sat down and really thought about what it would take to live, and people weren't living that long either, right? So that saving for the long haul, that little bit of money didn't get stretched out over as many years. So I think it was probably a reasonable amount of money at one point because life expectancy was so much shorter.
Right. Anybody else add anything? You think maybe the agenda of banks or financial institutions or insurance companies has anything to do with it at all?
I know I've read the history of 401ks and how it's not really to benefit the people and as so much as to just be a replacement to those corporate programs. And right. I definitely felt, I remember when I turned 18 and I got my first real job, and they brought me down to the room for my benefits, and they said, okay, what kind of plan or 401k plan do you want? And I remember choosing one and definitely deferring the taxes until, you're 59 and a half. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, well, I'll just do this just in case I need it. But, fingers crossed I won't. And we'll do a lot of other things before then. And now here I am many years later and still paying into similar programs. And I really felt this myth, it made me want to go to my bank or whatever, my 401k place, and take all my money out and go find another house. Yes. Have that money work for me, make money.
Yes. So I also think, so he kind of talks about banks and financial institutions. He talks about them kind of having an agenda. And so he kind of lists like 4 items. One of them was like, they want your money. Then the second was they want it on a regular basis. And then, if they have to give back money, they want to give back as little as possible, and then they want to hold it for forever. And so I feel like the financial institutions, when you kind of think about that agenda from that standpoint, it's almost like they're enforcing the accumulation theory. In the accumulation theory, when he kind of talks through it in the book, that's the stuff that's kind of so I guess at some point it kind of got to your wealth is focused on how much you have. And so the accumulation theory, I almost feel like they kind of take advantage of it, because from a human perspective, we're all kind of focused a little bit to the accumulation theory. I feel like the more that they kind of push on it, it's like, oh, well, don't forget to focus on your wealth, how much you're worth. Whereas that's really not doing anything for us. And then if we're doing it for a long haul, it doesn't benefit us. Right. So it's like, I don't know about you guys, but have you guys ever had like a week where, whether it's budgeting, dieting, whatever good practice it is, you have a good week and you're like, oh man, this was so nice. And then at the end of the week, you almost feel so starved for whatever the habits you're trying to replace it with, and you're always just like, I'm gonna treat myself, So it's like I kind of feel like it's almost like we're telling ourselves we're gonna be stuck in that period of, we're trying to force that good habit, and then you just don't have any kind of way to like reward yourself, right? And so it's anytime I've done that, I just get burnt out, right? So it's almost like financial burnout. Anybody kind of experience that?
Well, sure. I guess I guess feel like it's kind of the chapters here we're doing is almost they're all kind of very very related in my opinion, right? And it's kind of changing how you're looking at it, right? Instead of looking at okay, what is the short? Okay, I'm trying to cut expenses. So, but but why? They're kind of like why are we cutting expenses? What is the point? Okay, I want $1 million net worth. Well, why do you want $1 million net worth? Well, because I'm supposed to have $1 million in my savings account. Well, for what? Well, I want to. So it's changing the aspect of what you're doing on why, right? The value. Okay, it's not so much that you have the money because you want to be able to travel. Okay, well, what does it cost to travel? So instead of kind of putting it that what is it? What is the end result? Like, what do I need? It's what's the point of it, and how am I getting there? And the same thing with 401, right? It's 401 almost, and their retirement. It's almost like the opposite. It's the scarcity situation. I'm saving because I'm not going to have later, right? As opposed to I'm saving for the purpose of spending or investing or whatever the case may be. All right, and while the self society, the insurance companies and the financial advisors and stuff like that are they're playing the tax code, if you will. They're playing the rules. Okay, I want to invest. I want to make money. How do I do this? Well, I get other people's money, right? And let them leave it with me, and they never touch it. I want to put this illusion of your goal is to get accumulation and just have a whole bunch of money sitting there that you really can't ever spend. But in theory, you're like, oh, I'm rich. I got $1 million. You can't spend it. What's the point? Like you don't have $1 million, but you can't spend $1 million.
Right. Exactly.
I like the idea of him like, well, let's just cash out of everything and pay your penalties now and start using the money now. Kind of thing instead of changing away. I'm not quite sure if I answered your question, David, but
oh yeah, no, it's a discussion question. You answered it with your discussion.
But so, I do think it's kind of they're separate myths, right? Scarcity, abundance, saving, not saving. They're all somewhat related. You're saving because you're living in the scarcity mentality as opposed to an abundance mentality.
Right.
But they're different myths.
Right.
Corporate culture has also changed. I'm not sure if all that came from, post-depression and the job security and all that stuff. Okay, well, you want a secure job, you wanted this because coming out of depression, but then now that's kind of passed a little bit here. Wait, why were we doing that? Well,
right. Because we've always done it.
Sure.
Yes. Well, what did you guys think about the value creation that he kind of talks about in here? For me, I feel like this is something I feel like has been talked about very well in some of our other books, but when he talks about it in here, it almost, from a formula standpoint, almost kind of puts it into a different perspective, because it's just like the focus isn't necessarily the money. And he even says in there, it's like you don't even really want the money. You want what the money does for you. And it's like, well, if you think about it from that standpoint, people generally pay for value. So the more you give value, it's almost like a formula. You give this much value, you're going to be getting something out of it. There's all of this here that people are just willing to pay you for, because it's not the money that people want. It's what you get from the money, which is value. What are you guys' thoughts, like, as he kind of talks through value creation? Anything kind of stuck out, or, kind of maybe solidify it any further for you?
Well, for me, it gave me a different perspective, I think, as he started to talk about it, about how I look at material things and where is the money going and when is it going on. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and he was all excited. He's got a new CPA, and she's going to make sure he's not paying taxes. And I started asking him some of these questions, right? And he goes, well, I have to go buy something. And I was like, well, what are you going to go buy? He goes, well, my CPA told me to go buy a car and put it in the business's name. So I'm going to start getting everything out of mine. And I'm like, but where's the value in that? So I'm like, why would you spend your money on a depreciating asset when you have enough money to go buy a house or a something? And it was where he was putting that value was in that car, because the car, he could make smaller payments, spend the same amount, take the same depreciation, but make smaller payments. And I was like, you need to join book club. I was ready to strangle him, but it was crazy that, you know, to see his mind in one place of value, and then excited that mine had shifted to a whole nother perspective on how to spend money and where to spend money and why to spend money and all that kind of stuff. Oh,
Okay.
and something else I wanted to say. So Craig was talking about people coming out of the 1920s and, you know, having a job, being secure, not living in a life of scarcity, but actually having a job that pays for that life. I will say, I think our kids' generation is the first generation to start moving away from that, because of the ability to be like influencers and how easy it is to actually be an entrepreneur. I have a feeling that this generation, we will start to see a massive mind shift in how kids think about money and how kids think about making money and how kids think about spending money and that kind of stuff, and jobs and security and where should it be and that kind of stuff. So I do think there's a shift coming, and I think it'll be interesting. I won't say fun or bad, but I think it'll be interesting to watch it evolve. And I think that getting a job and paying into a 401k and having the traditional types of incomes and financials that we're used to, I think is going to become more cultural and less the norm. I think the norm, people that are more Americanized and don't live to one culture, live more in that Americanized way. I think you'll see them start to move to that more entrepreneurship and that American dream. And I think you'll continue to see specific cultures that put that value in education and that job. I think it'll become more of a cultural thing. And that's what will fill those typical attorney, doctor careers at some point.
So I agree with that. And if you remember, one of the books we read actually pointed out the fact that prior to, like, what was it, the Great Depression, or whatever the time period is, that was actually our reality. Generally, people were entrepreneurs, right? And we did fantastic, right? Because it was just bartering and trading is all it is. But then it was like, what was it? The Industrial Revolution is when those few players were able to kind of really scale. And then for a while, I think the model did work for people. Like a few people, like especially a lot of the baby boomers, it did work for them. But it was, I mean, I don't know that it was meant to last forever. But I honestly would be excited to see it kind of transition back. So I definitely agree with that. So getting into the third myth. So it's all about the numbers. Did this make any of you guys feel any kind of way? Because I don't know. I am a very big numbers person. And I think the first time I listened to this, I was just like, well, what do you mean that's a myth? You know, but was this, what was the initial thought kind of going into this chapter for you guys?
I like the idea of, you know, it's not always about the numbers. Not the numbers. I mean, I didn't get the impression that the numbers are not important, because the numbers are super important. But it's not so much about what is my what's the number on my paycheck, right? As far as on a weekly basis, it is not, you know, so much what is the number that is in my savings account or my investment account or things like that, or what, you know, what is my interest rate? You know, it's kind of like, I like how he's kind of looking back, like, why are you doing all this? Like, well, why do you want this big number? What is it? What is the point of the number there? And what does it mean? What is it going to get you to your end result? Well, it's going to get me to traveling the world with my wife in an RV, right? And that's kind of, you know. So I like, again, I didn't take it where numbers are not important. but you shouldn't focus on the result being the number, just the number getting you to the result you want almost, and kind of just, again, just changing how you look at it.
Right, right. So to add on to that, so I think one of the things he kind of talks about pretty well is so not necessarily focusing on the numbers like you were saying, but really more of like the qualitative factor. Like it's really hard to put a number to the quality of something, right? So you can kind of have numbers and they can just be thrown at you blindly, but it can all be part of a sales pitch, right? And so it's really, I think he's really kind of make more of a shift away from an economic standpoint, like quantitative to qualitative, but just, not just the numbers, but what story is like the numbers trying to tell you, what's the quality of those numbers that are being put in front of you, and how relevant is it?
I had liked in this chapter how he kind of gave you permission to be happy with what you have. And it's not a measurement of once you achieve this revenue number or total value, then you can be happy. It was finding happiness in what you have. And he even said, he's like, I remember being happier with 5 figures than I am with 6 figures or 7 figures or 8 figures. And that I thought, I know at the beginning, the last time we met too, he had touched on that a little bit too, about happiness being kind of your ultimate goal as opposed to being rich.
Right. Right. So anything else on this myth that really stuck out to you guys? That was really about everything I wanted to go through.
No, I thought it was a good chapter. I think to Natalie's point, I think it was nice to hear, hey, it's okay to be happy where you are and enjoy life. And then again, it's just another perspective, another way to look at your financials. It's not about the number, it's about what you do between the 0 and the number.
Mm-hmm.
As well as, you still keeps hitting home that whether it's the long-term number or the value you're getting out of those numbers is making things work in the present. Like, okay, our goal is for, it's not so much about the future as well. Obviously we want to have a nice, secure future, but we don't want to sacrifice the today for the later. And the later, we want to make sure we can actually access the later. And it's not, okay, I got a big bank account, but I still can't use the money for what I need, right? The whole mentality of, well, I'm afraid to spend because I'm not going to have it tomorrow, kind of thing. But making your money work for you and having access to it for what your needs. Because again, the goal is not to just have a big number. It is, what is the end result and how does that work? Do I need $1 million in my checking account to do all this? No, I need to have cash flows. I need to be able to pay for all this stuff on an ongoing basis. If I have a big bank account that I can't touch, well, it doesn't really help me get into anything. So I don't know. I don't know if you remember, Laura. One of our first conversations about money to some extent. I'm talking like Ridge Mill conversation. I was like, I don't know what, but spend all we want, we'll make more. Kind of thing, right? And that's the mentality. Whatever you want, just go do it. You need more money, go get it. You want to do more stuff, go get it. It's there. So that whole thing of, don't save for the now, start spending now and make the money now so you can have it now. It's there, it's available, and live for today, which will get you to the future at the same time if you do it right. I think that's kind of, you don't need to save for the future. You need to invest in today so you have a future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of very much of living in the present, not so much stuck in the what is in the future, and making sure that some kind of future that you don't know what it's actually going to be like is protected when we have no idea, right? We're studying the future. We don't know what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, I feel like it's really easy to get caught up in the future, especially for I know I get kind of stuck with that because I like planning. So I'm always kind of looking at, oh man, that's going to be really nice when that plan comes to fruition. But then at the same time, to your point, Greg, it's like, okay, well, what about right now? It's like, how am I going to take care of myself right now? Because it's like, I feel like if you get so caught up on, oh, this will be better later, or oh, I'll be able to do this, or oh, I'll be able to do that. Then when you come around to it, it's like it's that bigger. It's like that much bigger of a punch to the stomach, because it's just like, not only did you just live that entire moment, it's like, well, now it's like there's nothing you can do about it.
Sure,
So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah, I have a neighbor that lives in scarcity. They're always, they love this, I think there's one house between us, where and there's people that Lori, I think you know them too pretty well. It's all about that number, right? Oh, we need to have a big savings account, and well, they're never spend. Meanwhile, they've been buying a fence for 5 years, like a friggin' fence. They never pull the trigger. Oh, next week. It's the same thing. They never do anything. They're stuck in scarcity. They're stuck in this number in the future, and they don't live their lives. Sure, you're gonna die. You have all this money. I saved all this money for the banks. Great. You made the banks rich. Good job.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
yes.
It is not a good place to
investment.
live, that's for sure. I mean, well, if you live in scarcity like that, once you get to retirement age and you're older and you're supposed to be using that money to, I think in every chapter he's brought it up, you live like a prisoner because you don't spend the money. You can't spend the money. And even if you have enough to spend, you don't, because that's now your habit. That's what you've taught yourself. And so it's a vicious circle of life. And I'm not saying that we should go spend everything for sure. I mean, there's a happy medium between the two. I just think that I just think that it's, I think that it's a much happier life. If to your point, Natalie, you allow yourself to be happy in the now. I mean, the fence. What would the fence do? How would it enhance your life? Well, does that outweigh what it would cost you financially? Because if the enhancement outweighs it and the money is there, it's not putting you in and if the enhancement outweighs it, the money is there, then use it. Don't live in this prison.
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I definitely like living for invest in the cash flows, have $10 million invested in cash flows that's producing money, right? I mean, I think that's also a lot of it is you save all this money, spend your whole life working to save, and then when it's time to now not work anymore because you guys built the whole savings account, but you didn't build a cash flow account, right? I mean, that's kind of I think everybody on this call is definitely more of, okay, I'm not trying to build a savings account, I'm trying to build a investment vehicles, if you will, an investment in my net worth or my life that is going to be producing cash forever. So it's not, I don't need a savings account because my investments in my life is producing cash more than I need. Again, you gotta obviously higher cash flows than spend, but as long as my life is producing proper cash flows, I'm happy.
Your life or your
Sure.
wife?
The cash flow sound about 5 million a month sounds good, right? I mean, that's a good cash flow. But,
Awesome. So for next chapters or myths, excuse me, we're gonna go through 4, financial security, 5, money is power, and then 6, high risks equals high returns. They're all myths. And then after that, we actually may be able to finish the book basically one meeting after that. We've got about 2 more for this book. We're on to the next.
Who's
Me,
next
someone
after
goes in the
you?
text?
That's a good question.
I think it's me.
I think so too. Okay. Sweet. I'm still off the hook.
Till next time.
Did you hear Natalie's question? Will you send us the chapters in a text?
So on Tuesday, I'm not texting everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I will do that now.
I just read for about 2 hours and figure I'm safe most books.
Awesome. Well, I will see you guys next week.